Welcome to the Truer Business Podcast with Kara Ferreira
and Lauren Van Mullem. This season, we're looking at how online entrepreneurs built businesses around what they wanted for their lives.
We're talking to people who broke out of the follow my formula mindset to find what worked for them so that you can find the way that works for you.
What do you really want? Today, we'll tell you our stories of how we figured that out for ourselves and built businesses that support lives we love.
Yeah, so one of the originating ideas for this podcast was that we both work with a lot of different online entrepreneurs, and we've sort of noticed over the years that not everybody obviously stays in business.
It is the saddest thing because I'll write beautiful copy for them, and in 3 months, either their entire business has changed, their entire niche has changed, or they have gone on to something completely different.
Right. And I can look back at all the websites I've built, and there's a lot of them where, they were so sure they wanted to go all in on one thing. And then I look and I'm like, oh, that beautiful website is just gone like 6 months, a year later. But sometimes I feel like the thing is that they're chasing sort of shiny penny metrics of success, or they're like, oh, like I'm going to launch this business and make 6 figures on my online course. And when they don't do that in 6 months to a year, they decide the business isn't working and they just close it. And so I think sometimes it's more about setting the right goals and figuring out what you really want.
So we're really curious this season to talk with people who have made it work, even if that meant pivoting, even when that meant changing, but they're still doing it and they're doing it successfully. And the thing that they've got in common is they're doing it on their terms.
Right. And I think you and I, whenever we've chatted with each other, have sort of noticed that both of us do things very much on our own terms. So we thought we'd start with, as an introduction to us, sort of how we both got into business. Lauren's a copywriter. I'm a website designer. And how we've changed and evolved our businesses and how we've sort of settled into things that just work for us.
Yes. Every entrepreneur has an origin story.
Absolutely. So Lauren, do you want to kick us off and tell me, I don't even know your full origin story.
Oh, well, I graduated in the middle of the Great Recession, or maybe just as it was winding down. And I was an English major and no idea what to do with that. So I knew I wanted to make a living doing something fun. A big running theme in my life is chasing dopamine, and that has never changed. So I went into travel writing and I thought, oh, maybe I'll write about travel. And then I learned you don't make enough money to actually travel if you are trying to make a living writing about travel. It's very twisted. So then I thought, oh, I'll get into journalism. Great. Journalism was buckling. I mean, people were getting laid off. Entire departments were disappearing. Newspapers were not hiring by a wide margin. So I would write for anybody who paid me to do it. And meanwhile, the way I was paying the bills was working a job with LA City. Oh my gosh, it was like the whole cubicle, giant office building, middle of the city. It was gross. I just tried to think of a nice way to say that, and I couldn't. It was not only gross, it was very traumatic because I had a very abusive boss.
What was your role there? Were you working with words and writing there or something else?
So the job I accepted was working with words.
Okay.
It's like, oh, you can write the office newsletter and do all of these wordsy things. And I thought, great, I'm really qualified for that. And then the abusive boss decided to do a power play, and he took over and kicked my original manager to the side. And the original manager was amazing and sweet. And this guy was like, I'm going to fix you, young lady. And he put me in front of a spreadsheet for a year and 6 months.
I'm surprised you lasted that long.
Yeah, I lasted a year and 8 in total. And I was socking money away so hard, paid off my student loans, and I lost my mind and went full eat, pray, love, and did a trip around the world.
Sounds like what you should do after staring at spreadsheets for over a year and a half.
And I swore to never work in anybody else's office ever again. I did not like being under somebody else's power who was a mean little man. Oh, the day I quit, I wore like 6-inch heels and I'm 5'9".
I will tower over you.
And he was very short and he had a complex about it. Oh, it was great. So
it's perfect.
Then I fell into marketing, as so many people who thought they were going to do journalism do. And I somehow found myself working for another fairly abusive entrepreneur, and she had a talent for finding extraordinarily talented people. So I met people that I have worked with for years and years and years, and they were very good at SEO. They were very good at marketing and building websites, and they were all in on software as a service because that's where the big money was.
Okay.
And they wanted the big money, and I was like, I'm broke as a joke. I need the big money. I want to do stuff and enjoy my life. And we did software as a service, thought leadership, articles, so much marketing for almost a decade.
Okay. Wow.
And
so you were doing that the SAS for a while then.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And is that like motivating you then? Like, I want to sort of, this is the niche I've fallen into, and also I'm chasing a certain pay grade.
Yeah, I thought of it as like chasing the big buffalo that would feed everybody in the village. Like that's what we were going after. And I learned all of the nasty bleeding neck sales tactics that I now no longer use because I have completely changed over to ethical marketing, ethical copywriting. But back then I didn't know that was a thing, and got really good at the unethical marketing and unethical copywriting with all the manipulative tactics, and then A/B testing to make them even more effective.
Oh gosh, I hate A/B testing. You need it. You do need it sometimes. Like, it is useful. You don't
It's
actually
so useful. Yeah, so that's how I got to the burnout point. And I was scratching at the roof of a 6-figure year, and I was really proud of myself. And I crashed completely. I was working so hard to get that, and I just went down. And the people around me, these really talented people we had all climbed up together, they also went down. We all crashed at the same time, and just total burnout. And then I realized I cannot care about another app. I can't bring myself to do it. Like, these people are not making the world a better place. I don't want to work doing this anymore. And I quit everything. I quit everything thinking I would paint or make hats or like just find some creative thing that would be really fun.
So did you have a plan at all, or were you just like, no, just done quitting?
I had no plan. My plan was to give myself space to find a plan.
All right.
And what ended up happening is I got a really sweet email, and they were like, I really want to work with you. You're the only copywriter that I think will do an amazing job on this. Would you please, please, please? And I am a sucker for flattery. And I was like, okay. And that was an amazing client. They were lovely, and they were a coach.
And how did they know about you? From the SAS, or?
I'm not sure how they found me, actually. It's been so long. That was many years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, though. So that you just did that job, and then...
Yeah, so that one was a coach, and the next really sweet email was a coach, and it's like, come on, people, I'm trying to quit. And then I really loved working with coaches. So I made a list of all of my favorite clients ever and figured out what they had in common. And it turns out they were all coaches, teachers, like they were trying to show other people better ways to live their lives.
All right.
So that became my new niche.
And it still is your niche.
It still is. I love it. Okay, how about you?
I mean, there's some commonalities. I'm wondering, as we talk to more people too, I feel like so many people who go into work for themselves on the online space, there's the burnout moment. And they're like,
yeah, I think there's a bad boss moment. I think there's a burnout moment.
Yep. Yeah. So I graduated in 2010 with a history degree. So another one of those degrees where you're like, oh, I'm going to do something cool and maybe artsy with this. Then you're like, oh, wait. But I did sort of use it to then go into pursuing international relations. So I was sort of thinking, when I first started my career, I was chasing not necessarily the money, but I was like, I want to be given all of the accolades for being smart and brilliant and doing important work. So it was like the Arab Spring happened. I had traveled to Egypt during my junior year of college and had studied some Arabic. And I was like, I'm going all in on this. Moved to New York City, got an internship at a think tank for a little while, and then ended up at the UN for an international humanitarian aid organization. Meanwhile, I was pursuing a master's degree in counterterrorism. And then there was this It's a nonprofit, and they have branches in DC and New York, and I think in Brussels, and it's called Young Professionals in Foreign Policy. I became the executive director of the New York branch of that.
Whoa!
I was also on the board of this really cool nonprofit that was founded by a young German immigrant to the United States called New Women New Yorkers. And she was helping other women immigrants to New York City sort of get resourced, learn English as a second language, get access to small business things. So I was just really busy. It's sort of like I was like, oh, I'm going to be busy and important, and I'm going to be a big deal one day was sort of my whole thing. And a lot of it was fun, and a lot of it I really was passionate about, but I was on the birth control pill because my cycle kept on disappearing and doing things when I wasn't on it, or I get really bad acne whenever I went off of it. I was taking sleep, not like prescription sleep medication, but like I was taking like, I don't know what they are anymore. It was a blue pill. It was over the counter. But I was taking some sleep thing at night because I was just so amped up and like anxiety ridden all the time. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm just killing it. But then I remember I kept on thinking, I'm like in my early 20s still, I'm like 24. And I always had these dark under eye circles. And I was like, I need to get like better concealer. And then there was a month where the lovely thing about my UN job is it went on these like huge breaks at certain parts of the year. And so there was sort of a month that I had off. It coincided with a break in the grad school. And I just was like sleeping a lot and like relaxing. I remember being in the subway and looking at my reflection in one of the windows and being like, oh, my under eye circles are gone. Like I don't need better concealer. Like I just need better like work-life balance. And so then I was sort of like, I don't really feel like I need to be taking sleeping pills to go to sleep or be on the birth control pill to manage my cycle and health. So then I got interested in how do I like fix all of that holistically, enrolled in the Integrative Institute of Nutrition, or the Institute of Integrative Nutrition, IIN is how it's the short term. Went down this whole health thing. I think it's a good program. I think it's a little bit of a racket at the same time.
So many of them are.
Mixed bag. There's so many IIN grads out there. But the one thing I will say for it is it really introduced the idea of like working for yourself. And I don't think it ever occurred to me that like you could just go work for yourself unless like you had like a brick and mortar shop or you went and pursued like startup funding. I just never had the thought process until IIN, like, oh, I could just like have an online business. And so naturally, when I started out, I fell into health coaching, and my niche was women who were having an issue coming off of the birth control pill and having a healthy cycle. Most of them wanted to conceive. So sort of a fertility thing. My website was called quitthepill.com. I did pretty well with it, but I kept on redesigning my website all of the time. And so I got really good at making websites. And people would be like, oh, who made your website? And I'd be like, oh, I did. So then other health coaches would hire me to do their websites. And there reached a point where I was probably doing more website work than Quit the Pill health coaching work. And eventually in 2020, when I had a 1-year-old and the pandemic was happening, I was like, I can't do both businesses. So I sold Quit the Pill for a couple $1,000s and then just went all in on the website work at that point. And starting niche was really the health coaches. And since then, it's sort of been more like creatives and consultants. But basically all women have been, like almost all, like I always like to say, like women and a few cool dudes.
Yeah, that's also my demographic is women and a few like remarkably cool dudes.
Right. And it's not that there have been parts of my website design career where like I've purposefully tailored all my copy towards like women. And there's times where I haven't, but it's just the people I attract tend to mostly be women.
Yeah. And I think that's a function. It's definitely a function of my branding, where like the people who come in tend to be like super lovely humans. They are animal lovers. They are just sweet people.
Yep.
So, and that seems to cross gender lines, although there's definitely a big shift like towards the women.
Yeah. I think sort of what I've been wanting out of my business has evolved a little bit over time. Like at the beginning, it was just like, I'm chasing this international relations career where I'm never home and could foreseeably just be like travel. I like to travel. I don't like to travel for work. So it was like, clearly this is a mismatch. So I want something I can do and work from home. And remember, I also had my dog who's now 8. When he was a puppy, he had really bad digestive troubles.
Oh no.
So I used to have to be like, I can't come to work today because my puppy is sick. And I remember my like white male older boss would be kind of like, your dog is sick? And I'm like, yeah. And I was sort of like, I don't want to ever have to like justify this to anybody ever again. Like, I just want to be like my dog is sick or my toe hurts or whatever it is, I'm not coming to work today. Like, I can do it from home. And so that was like a major thing I was chasing. And then as I had my daughter, I was working from home. I didn't have childcare. And I was like, I need somebody who does not care if I'm breastfeeding on a call and the baby starts crying. And for the most part, that was women, but there are definitely a few dads along the way that I've worked with who are like, oh, and it's funny because like I like hide that I have a baby and then they start like screaming, which I'm like, oh, I can't hide it anymore. And they'd be like, oh, you have a baby. That's so great. The ones who are like, this is work time. I'm like, yeah, you're not my person.
No, definitely not. I think it's so interesting that both of our stories have a moment of, this is what I thought I wanted. And that moment is usually like right before burnout.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm killing it. I'm doing all of these things that I can put on my resume and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm a anxious wreck and I can't do this any longer.
Okay. So I thought it would be fun if we did like, here's what I thought I wanted. And then here's what I actually wanted.
Oh gosh.
Here's what I thought I wanted. I thought I wanted to be Joanna Wiebe. For any copywriters out there, you might know who she is. Nobody else will, but she is one of the top copywriters in North America. She founded Copy Hackers, which is like an enormous online copywriting school. She's actually a remarkably good teacher. And I wanted to be her so badly. Like, where does she get her haircut? I want her haircut. Like, it was a little stalkery, I'm not going to lie. But I got a chance to talk with her on a call once. And it was just the two of us. I was interviewing her for a third party. I got to ask her anything that I wanted. And I'm like, okay, how did you do it? How did you get to 6 figures the first time? Because by then she had been like in the multiple 6 figures crowd. And she told me, she gave me a bullet point list of here's everything I did. And I looked at that list. And I'm like, shit, that's a lot of work.
and I felt tired.
Right. I felt tired. I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. So it took a long time to deprogram myself because we're told it's in the air we breathe. Like, okay, you want a 6-figure business. That was, 10 years ago. Now it's, you want a multiple 6-figure business. You want a 7-figure business. Yes. Oh, it took a long time for me to let go of that and realize I actually really want time and space to do my actual life priorities.
Which are?
Oh, I'm really I love exercise. I love moving my body, which is frustrating because I feel like I should look like Wonder Woman at this point, and I don't. Like, you could not tell. But I love it, and I do it every day. And I actually take 2 hours in the middle of the day to exercise. So, I mean, I'm like not lifting heavy for 2 hours, 1 hour of walking, jogging, but I'll be in Pilates 5 days a week, and I'll do mixed martial arts twice a week, and I love it. But taking 2 hours in the middle of the day feels so indulgent. Like, it's my little guilty thing that is awkward to admit to, because it's basically a 2-hour lunch break.
Right.
And then I eat lunch.
So you just add on to it. Yeah.
But I swear, it's better than burning myself out for 6 figures. And then I love traveling. I try to work when I travel. And then I try not to work when I travel. And neither one of those actually works.
Yep.
I haven't found a way to do it. Working when I travel is miserable. Not working when I travel means I come home to a mountain of emails.
The emails. Yeah.
The emails. Oh, gosh. I still love traveling. It's just complicated, and I haven't figured out how to uncomplicate it. And then flexibility to work with my energy when it's like, sometimes it's super high. Usually it's not. Sometimes I need to crash for a couple days, and sometimes I get weirdly overwhelmed and my brain stalls out. And having flexibility where I'm not getting in trouble for that, it's magical.
Right. Those are like your key motivating.
Those are my big ones. I love slow mornings when I can get them. Sometimes I have to do morning calls, but when I don't, oh my gosh.
I know. I love a slow morning. I was going to say, I don't want anything scheduled until 10.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think sort of similarly, I don't think well, when I first went into like entrepreneurship as a health coach, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go from like basically wanting to be like Secretary of State to like, okay, I still need to be like really awesome and get the you're so smart accolade. So I was like, oh, there's a health coach who actually did her program as I was training. Nicole Jardim. She's again women's menstrual health, but just like so science based. A lot of health coaches aren't, but she like could probably go toe to toe with any doctor and like look at all the hormones and the blood testing and whatever. And I was like, okay, I want to be her and she has online programs. She got to the point where she no longer was working with one-on-one clients. Again, she's not someone who's like touting a money number, but like she's doing well. So I was like, okay, that's what I want to be. And then as I started just procrastinating by redoing my own website every other day, gotten the website work through other coaches, I don't feel like I've ever had a big goal for the website business. It's just sort of been like how it evolves, and how it's evolved is like, I don't want to be working all of the time. I also want the slow mornings. I want to be able to remember like before I had my daughter be like, today's like a Netflix and chill day. That's just what I'm doing. So I think it really has been much more about the lifestyle and having the time be my own. And again, like I don't want to have to feel bad about calling in sick for myself or for the animals or humans in my care. So it's really just been about being able to define my own schedule. So at times it's almost been a hindrance to my business because I've not grown or taken on clients to a level because I feel like it's going to impact my schedule too much. So it's something I need to like, I've been trying to get over in terms of like, I can still take on more clients or have a program or do whatever and set boundaries. It's always a balancing act because I think that is my big thing is wanting the time to just be able to sort of govern my own schedule.
Yes. Do you have money goals for your business every year? Like you have to hit a certain number?
Yeah. And so this is my second year this past year, 2023, right? We're in 2024. Yeah. So 2023 was the second year I just cracked six figures. And for me, it hasn't been about like, I want to crack six figures and I can say I'm a six-figure business owner. And to be fair, it's actually not all for my business because the other thing my flexibility has afforded me is I work with horses in a high school riding program at the high school that I went to. So it's allowed me to be involved in that program and to help ensure that that program succeeds and continues to exist. The school cannot pay me to play with horses in the way that I need to be paid to afford the things in my life. So my business has afforded me the ability to do that, which is really cool. And so I do make some money from helping to manage that riding program. So the six figures isn't all my business, to be, totally frank about the numbers. But essentially my goal, like for this year, I want to hit 125,000. And it's not so much so I can say it. It's because like, that's kind of at this point what I need to make to be able to be a human and save. I'm not good at savings. So it's more about like real life financial budget goals, not like pie in the sky goals. So that is like my money goal, but it's not so much like a driving factor as like a basic life necessity.
Yeah. I worked with a financial coach and she specializes in like women owned businesses and variable incomes. And she helped me completely overhaul my finances. So I actually knew for the first time, here's what I need to make to support the Pilates and the mixed martial arts
and the travel
and my housekeeper. Like, I have a house cleaner twice a month and I could not live enjoyably without her. Like I take care of part of the bills for the upkeep of our house. And then my husband takes the lion's share because he makes more money than I do. Mm-hmm. He works in somebody else's office. But yeah, figuring out the bare minimum was really useful.
Right.
Because anything on top of that bare minimum I need to cover my basic bills is gravy.
Right.
And then I have to be responsible with it and put it in a savings account that I can neither see nor touch. Otherwise I'm
the same way.
Yeah.
And I've not been a human who does savings, but that's like, so I support my husband has to be in New York City for his job. So he pays much more money to have an apartment because it's expensive in New York City. So I cover the entire household costs of our little house in Connecticut where I live with my daughter full time. So that's partially why I just need to make enough because I'm kind of like a sole earner in a way because we're supporting two households, but he does one, I do the other.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think I have to acknowledge, like, a lot of my privilege is I am married to a guy who makes white guy money in Southern California. And that's why I have a house in Southern California.
That's fair. But you still have to make an income to support all the things that you
Right. If
want.
we wanted anything nice in the house, that's where my income
Right.
comes in and makes things a little cushier.
Yeah. But that's about not being like, oh, for my business to be successful, I need to make $500,000 a year. It's just like a realistic number that I've slowly worked up to. Like I said, this past year is my second year just crossing over 100. For a long time, I was like 67. Like it's been a slow process. And I think that's where a lot of people, if they put that goal, that number pressure on themselves, and they feel like they have to achieve it in a short period of time, that's where it gets a little bit dicey.
So would you say it's fair? And I'm thinking in an ideal universe, which very few people live in, but, figure out what you want for your lifestyle, what you really enjoy, how much rest you need, and figure out the bare minimum that covers that, and then build everything else.
That's how sort of I would approach it. I also feel like the scheduling, whenever I've gotten in my head, like, oh, I'm going to hit that $125,000 number by putting that online course out there. I'm going to do the online course and it's going to kill it. And I've got to record it and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, for like 2 months, I'm just going to hustle and record it and then market it and do it. One, I never do it. But two, I'm sort of like, I feel like you have to get to where you want to be by already doing it. So if where I want to be is having my somewhat flexible schedule, like I can't get there by burning myself out along the way with a not flexible schedule. So I think part of it is setting the parameters and figuring out, because, you do hear, I guess this is sort of the pie in the sky in the other sense, because there's the pie in the sky money and there's the pie in the sky time flexibility. But I've heard so many podcasts with people where they're like, oh, like I built my business by working in like the 2 hours a night after my kids went to bed. Like, so I think there are ways to do it on whatever time schedule like your being will allow. Like I am not somebody who's going to do an all-nighter.
No, not anymore.
Yeah.
We are not in our 20s, yo.
So I think it's, figuring out the numbers that you need. Don't be afraid. I feel like so many people in online space are like, I need to go all in on the business and I'm a failure if I still have my full-time job or my side job. Like I actually, as I was transitioning to health coaching and then full-on website design, my United Nations job, I kept it, but I went from full-time to part-time first. And then I worked as a VA to bring in extra money while I didn't have quite enough website clients. So I think it's also about if you do have bills to pay, not relying on your dream business to foot that entire bill right away. Like give it some space to grow.
Yeah, I think that's something people underestimate is how much funding they need for giving their business time to grow to a level that can sustain them. You're not going to do it in 3 months. You're not going to do it in 6 months. It's probably going to take, 1 or 2 years?
Yeah, I think realistically. I mean, of course, there are the outliers. There always are. But I think
you always hear about the outliers because that's what everybody wants to use for their testimonials. And I'll give y'all an ethical copy tip right now. Don't use the outliers as your testimonials. You want testimonials for people who have achieved something that is reasonable for other people to achieve.
Right. But so I think the point is look at what your key motivators are. Is it making the lots of money really? Is it time freedom? Is it some blend of things? And then building the business around that. And if you need to rely on other sources of income as you make it work to be able to do that. And also the marketing piece is the thing we also discuss all the time is just like you can have a business, but if you don't actually market to get eyeballs on it and to attract clients. So that's something we'll also touch on throughout the season is how there's not a one size fits all marketing formula either. And how do you find the thing that you actually will do so that you actually get your business out there and attract clients.
So should we talk about what we are planning and plotting for the rest of this season?
Yes, I think that'd be awesome.
Okay, so we are looking at online entrepreneurs, and some of them have big businesses and some of them have small businesses, but we're asking them, how they got clear on what they wanted for themselves, for their lives, and how they built their businesses around that.
Yes. And also like the real stories of how they built the business, or are maybe still building those businesses, or how they rebuilt their business at certain points. Because instead of just having like, I'm here at this point, here's my formula, I think it's good to hear sort of like the things they tried that didn't work for them and how they got clear on the things that did work for them and actually got their businesses off the ground. Yeah, and that brings us to that formula and the copy this.
Oh yeah, the breaking out of the formula and copy this mindset. The stuff that you see all the business gurus, the business coaches touting is like, hey, I will give you the template. I will give you the
10 steps that made me $1 million.
10 steps that made me $1 million.
Yeah.
I'll give you the emails and you just change the names around. You'll be fine. Oh my goodness. So yeah, any of that, like copy this and you'll get 10K in a month. No, instead we're going to show ourselves and our listeners how to find the way which works for you, because it is not what worked for anybody else. If it worked for somebody else, it worked for them. Finding what works for you is how we're still in business.
Right. And it doesn't mean there's not ever any value in some of those blueprints. It's just you have to know how to adapt them for yourself. It's like, okay, great, that worked for you, but my style would be this. And so that's sort of the skill set that I think is not always being promoted or taught in a lot of these online programs. And so we're going to talk about it here on the podcast.
Yeah, it's going to be a good season.
Right. So we'll be back with an interview next. We hope that you'll be with us for episode 2 and more to come. Cheers.
Cheers.